touchdown for Atlanta. The Falcons improved to 4-1 overall and 3-0 on the road after beating the defending champs in Denver Sunday. Matty Ice and company have now beaten both Super Bowl teams from a year ago, and they are sitting on top of the NFC South. Merrill Hodge in the house. How you doing, my friend?
You, Molly. I'm
always good to see you. Always good to have you.
We're going to start off with pleasantries, right?
Of course we are.
But then we never know.
And then let's get right to it. Speaking of that,
to be berated.
Yeah, why not?
Merrill, are the Falcons for real?
I don't think there's any doubt they're for real. And then not to doubt the Falcons last year that we saw go 5-0 and then fall apart. Yep. We'll just start with their offense, then we can get to their defense. They probably have one of the most exciting offenses in football. The Steelers would play a role in there. But they do one thing more and better than anybody in football. They have a lot of misdirection, a lot of flow action. And something they have used up to the Denver game, but they really exposed Denver with it, was the use of their running backs. And if you heard Matt Ryan talk in his press conference, he said something that would probably go by your ears. You probably wouldn't think that much about it, but it's so true and it's so valid. He said our running backs run routes like wide receivers. And I'm telling you, if you took the numbers off their backs and then you watched them, you would think that. Because I'm just watching a couple things from getting ready for some other shows. I'm like, I'm going to tell you this. There's a lot of receivers that struggle running routes like this. And here's the advantage. You're running against linebackers who are playing outside the box, who have no business being out there oftentimes and don't want to be out there. So offensively, I don't think there's any question they're legit. Defensively, you talk about a huge improvement. Just what they do with their defensive line, the havoc they create, the matchups they create, the pressure they create. Their back end has been outstanding. They got all the linebackers hurt, but you didn't even notice it yesterday. And that's often due because of the pressure that they were applying. So I don't think there's any question that they are for real.
First of all, the defense is crazy because Vic Beasley shows up and Dwight Freeney is getting like a sack a game. Isn't he like 50 years old by now?
You know, it's funny. I'm glad you brought him up because last week he had two of the freakiest sacks I've ever seen. And he has some freaky ones now. Yeah. I mean, he's got the spin down. Nobody, I think, has had a spin like that. But he had a half spin, back spin, and made a sack that was like, you always have to watch like 3 times. It was the coolest sack
He was
ever.
supposed to be done 5 years ago.
Very
the guy
true.
is still getting sacks, in important
No,
games
it's
for a really good team.
Let me tell you this. Here's the thing. If Belichick was doing this with Freeney, you know what? We would be going crazy that he's took the one play. Listen, coaching in the NFL is awesome. There's a lot of coaches that don't get the credit, that they take a guy, they say, what's left in that tank? Let's utilize it. The Atlanta Falcons will do that with Dwight
So the
Freeney.
defense, kind of like the Cowboys, how the story to me of the game, of course, the offensive line is great, but, oh, look at that. The defense held it down against a pretty good team. This Falcons, the question about them is, can the defense be bend, not break? Can they be good enough to let the offense do the thing? And the offense, it's like you got two Le'Veon Bell lights out there. Now, one guy, Coleman's the fast guy, and Devontae, he's smart, he's strong, but they both have fresh legs because they're alternating all game, and they can both catch passes out of the backfield, and as you mentioned, run routes like wideouts.
Yep.
Of course they're for real. Of course they are.
Stephen A?
Well, if they're for real, that would mean that the Minnesota Vikings ain't necessarily the best. I just wanted to throw that thought out there. Having said all of that, let me say this. Matt Ryan is playing lights out. Give credit where credit is due. There is a name that people have not brought up. We know Julio Jones, 517 yards receiving, 24 receptions on the year, averaging 21.5 yards a catch. He's been absolutely sensational. We know that. Mohamed Sanu was a decent pickup. There's no denying that. And Jacob Tamme used to be in Denver, can do some things. The name that nobody's mentioned, Tevin Coleman. 4 receptions for 132 yards yesterday. If you really, really think about it, what did you just say? The ability of the backfield to come out and run routes like receivers, look like receivers. That's what you're talking about.
I mentioned Coleman.
So, no, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Here's the deal. I didn't. I really didn't. Here's the deal. When I think about Atlanta, I think about the AFC South. And the only reason why I'm willing to hold off on them is because I know that Carolina hasn't been what we expected them to be. Unless someone is willing to concede definitively that Josh Norman's absence has completely shredded their back, the back of their defense, their secondary. And because of that, Carolina's defense will never recover. As long as they got a shot, I'm going to hold off on putting Atlanta up there and saying the division is theirs to lose, because I still want to see Carolina and whether or not they're going to wake up.
I'm gonna throw one more name, actually, that is really critical, maybe the biggest steal in free agent, Alex Mack, the center for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, that has solidified their offensive line. Now, you know, to your point, where's Carolina? I mean, we're going to see a little bit of them today without Cam Newton. Listen, a third of their offense is gone.
Yes.
I mean, you can't even do it.
Yeah, but Kelvin Benjamin, Mike, look, he's their #1 option. They went to the Super Bowl without him. Where's he been, Merrill?
Well, and actually, it's not even him. I mean, they cannot run the football with any consistency anymore. But they used to control the game, dominate
And
the
why
game.
is that?
Well, you got Jonathan Stewart's hasn't been there for weeks. That's killed them. So what they've done, they've asked their quarterback to be their runner. Then they asked him to be the thrower. The only thing they haven't asked him to do is play in the secondary. I just think there's too many issues there that they're never going to recover. I mean, they may win tonight, but
also, you look at the trajectory of teams. The Falcons are getting better and better from week 1, where it was like, oh, they're no good, to week 2, week 3. Every week you see a little more, little more. They're getting better. They're trending this way. To me, their danger is peaking too early. Like, you don't want to be at your best week 8. You want to be at your best week 17.
By the way, y'all, just so y'all know, they still got Seattle coming up this week. That'll be a good test. They got a home game against Green Bay in a couple of weeks. They got a road game at Philadelphia. Arizona might be on the come up. Kansas City, they also got at home. And then Carolina and New Orleans to end the season. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and over the first 5 weeks, the last 2 seasons, they won 9 of 10, put up 337 points, most in the NFL. So now will they continue past that week 5 mark? Staying with us, Mara.
Right here, not going anywhere, kid.
Always a good thing. Giants lost to the Packers, but Odell Beckham, Max, he made up with the kicking net. So cute. Is this a sign he learned his lesson? We get into it.
Now Manning rolls right. Now Manning throws to the back of the end zone. Fought by Odell Beckham Jr. to get his feet in. Yes, touchdown.
Yeah, we hugged it out. You know, last time I hit him, he hit me back. I told him it was a good hit. I said from now on we can be friends. It is what it is, man. You gotta have fun. You gotta have fun.
The things we cover. It wasn't all bad news for the Giants last night in the loss to the Packers. Odell Beckham caught his first touchdown pass of the season. He even made up with, as you just heard him, with the kicking net that he infamously had an issue with during a loss to the Redskins. Stephen A., do you think Beckham has now learned the error of his ways?
Nope, he hasn't. And I'm going to tell you why he hasn't. Because the Giants are going to keep losing. And as a result, he's not going to be able to compose himself. See, all of this is nice. You know, he got a touchdown yesterday, first time in 5 games, got a touchdown, okay? Still ain't having any big receiving games. Only scored 56 yards yesterday, 5 receptions. The Giants have lost 3 straight. 2 Washington, a game they should not have lost. 2 Minnesota, which they got beat up with. And, of course, yesterday. Now you've got the schedule. Baltimore's next. They just lost a big game yesterday. The Rams, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Jeff Fisher actually looks like there's a level of productivity that you could attach to his name occasionally for change. Not week to week, but he does have his moments, okay? And then you got Philadelphia, Cincinnati, got Pittsburgh coming up on the schedule, Dallas coming up on the schedule, Philadelphia, Washington, Detroit.
Standard issue schedule.
All I'm saying to you is that, yeah, it's a standard issue schedule, but the Giants aren't living up to their own standards for a plethora of reasons. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be Odell Beckham Jr.'s fault. And I don't believe, even though he's got to mature and can't lose his composure, all I'm saying is there's so much that's going on with this team. I don't think that he's going to go the rest of the season without you seeing him implode emotionally, because I want to implode emotionally watching them, and I ain't even playing.
Including yesterday, including last night, where the O-line did its typically bad job of protecting Eli, of blocking for the run. Of course, part of that's because your starting running backs who know how to help there aren't there. By the way, Eric Flowers, the first-round pick, who I thought was the most talented offensive lineman in that draft, he's very, very young. And O-line's really a skills position, but he had an altercation with an ESPN reporter in the locker room afterward. You know, the O-line, Eric Flowers, the left tackle, who hasn't played well. The O-line has been terrible, but even when Eli has had some protection, he's thrown the ball inaccurately and frequently missed Odell when he's been open, either in terms of even going his way, targeting him, or throwing him an accurate pass. And yet Odell yesterday, who had every right to be frustrated again, makes a spectacular catch in the end zone for looked like a touchdown, I guess, good enough.
You think he's...
And he had the presence of mind to make a little fun of himself, to have a little fun with it. Look, people are who they are. He's always going to be emotional. This isn't the last time he'll ever get in trouble. The week before last against Minnesota, there'll be other incidents. But for a guy who was talking about himself in a way that made you think, this guy has no sense of himself. This guy thinks he's more important than he is. He's taking things a little too seriously, and his ego's a little out of control. For a guy in that position, to do what he did yesterday suggests he does have a sense of self, a sense of place, that he can kind of come to grips with what's happening with himself, poke a little fun of himself. I thought it was a very encouraging sign as a Giants fan about Odell.
All right, well, the key is, can he keep it there? Which, to your point, I know you want to see Katie keep it there. You know, when you look at his behavior, which has really been the flaw here, is he's used the victim card. You know, it's the official's fault, it's Josh Norman's fault, it's the media's fault. You know, and he threw the media out there, you know, he never once said, quit showing my great catch. Now, he didn't get mad at that. He was fine showing that, but then when the table turned, he didn't like that. So what has to ultimately change is your behavior. You got to accept accountability. Only Josh can do that. Now, this is an example. Excuse me, Odell. This is an example that he did it. Will he have to do it the whole year? I would agree with you. Will he do it the whole year? Well, I don't think anybody really knows that. But if he doesn't do it the whole year and he keeps falling back and becoming the victim and it wasn't me and it's the officials or it's somebody, they're trying to get on me, well, that's going to spiral into the Giants eventually going to have to part their way. 2 years from now, we'll be sitting, well, John, you know, Odell Beckham could have been great.
Yeah.
Thought it'd be great, but we've traded
But the question is, since people can only change on the margins, it's not like you wake up one day, you're a completely different person. You can make marginal changes. You can make incremental changes over time. The question is this a step in the right direction or not?
But here's my problem.
Break up to make up.
Here's my problem with you and what you're leaving out. You're a Giants fan. You're a native New Yorker. If there's one team that you watch religiously, it is the New York Giants. We talked about Odell. We've mentioned very little about Eli Manning. Now, our very own Josina Anderson for ESPN, you know, talked about how there were folks with the New York Giants telling her she does a great job reporting on the NFL for us. Talked about how there are people within that locker room that have a problem with the average production of an Eli Manning. 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a QBR of 58. This is a guy that's Mr. Reliable. And the reason why I'm looking at you, Merrill, is this. This dude is there every weekend. He doesn't miss games. He's been playing with this guy for years. And I'm just saying that there should be an elevated level of productivity that we're not seeing from Eli Manning. And don't tell me that that doesn't play a role in the frustrations to Odell Beckham Jr.
Well, there's no question about that. Last week, I mean, you just watched the game last night. There was 3 opportunities that could have changed the game that he should hit. And you can't sit there and go in the locker room, or you can't go on Tuesday or Monday when they watch tape and just go, you got to hit these. We create these every week in the NFL. If you can get 2 or 3 of these, you feel blessed, but you can't leave them on the field. Now, that being said, to talk, you know, the running game, that phase has disappeared for them. The Packers did a great job of dropping the 8th guy in the box unaccounted for, so they did some scheme-wise.
Right.
That phase doesn't add to this. I think these problems continue, you know, but I don't think there's any question that in that locker room, you're like, we got 3 guys wide open. You have
But
to
this is why, one last thing, this is why it's a team. The left tackle can be exploited because he's so young, he doesn't have technique yet in Flowers. So the O-line is porous. So Eli is rushed. And Eli has been much less than perfect. He has not had a very good year, in my opinion, especially using Odell. So Odell gets frustrated. There's that, but there's also things like the Giants have just been unlucky on takeaways, right? They had a ball go through Adams' hand. They had a fumble that they didn't recover.
But you're talking about unlucky.
Easily changed the game.
You're talking about unlucky. What you're not pointing out is how Odell Beckham Jr. is looking at that. You're a wide receiver. You're on that field. You're running those routes. You're open. You believe you should get the ball. I'm not saying
I absolutely am. I started by talking about how Eli has been missing.
I'm not absolving him. I'm simply saying the fact that he's 23 and emotional and the problems we know the Giants have, you know he's going to lose it again.
But if he uses that excuse, he'll be right back in the behavior that got him in the situation.
No victims, just victors, right, Merrill? That's
right.
what we want.
Everybody ain't as disciplined as you, Merrill.
That's right.
Everybody ain't as disciplined as you. I'm just saying.
I love this group right here.
I'm just saying.
Coming up next.